Hello and welcome to the You're an Asset podcast. I'm your host, Casey the Dollar. And on this podcast, we find out who is an asset in the financial industry and who is just an ass. Thanks for joining me, everyone. This week, we have a very special guest, and we have many assets to discuss. Our special guest is none other than Miss McCall Marshall. Hi, McCall.
Hi. Always a pleasure. Always a joy.
Today on the show, we're going to be putting the spotlight on multiple assets that are in paper form, but they're not of much monetary value. They are books. So we're going to be doing a thorough book recommendation on today's show, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, McCall, how I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 books in my lap right now from various authors that we've read over a series of 3 years, which doesn't seem like a lot.
No, well, I think we started actually reading books together like 2 years ago. And then we had formed our little insurance book club.
So as a company, we read a book together and go over it every single Monday. I want to start off with The Psychology of Money. So you feel like it's just a really nice intro to anything finance, insurance, money, your mindset about money, obviously, Psychology of Money. It's by Morgan Housel. McCall, tell us your thoughts about The Psychology of Money.
It's something we experience a lot in our comment section. You have people who are they understand how to make money work for them, and they want to find other ways to leverage it, and they want to make sure that their money is working for them and they're not working for their money, right? And so there's a lot of that. But then we also have the other spectrum where people are I'm going to be poor my entire life and blah, 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 blah. We see the spectrum, right? We see the range that is the mindset around finances. If you want a good starting point to understand just general mindset and maybe things that you could recognize within yourself in regards to finances, because you're not going to change your finances unless you change the way you think about finances.
100%.
It's just not going to happen. And so this book is a great foundation for kind of getting your mindset to switch.
I did myself a huge favor and I highlighted a lot of points in this book, and without even planning on saying it, there's a perfect quote right from page 12 that says your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.00001% of what's happened in the world, but 80% of how you think the world works.
One of the things that I distinctly remember that really stuck out to me was this idea of we all want someone to look at us and say, oh, look how successful they are. When in reality, everyone's just saying, oh, I wish I was that successful.
I have a quote that says, it's so ingrained in us that to have money is to spend money that we don't get to see the restraint it takes to actually be wealthy. And since we can't see it, it's hard to learn about it. People look wealthy, but you can't see wealth is part of that point. You cannot see the truly wealthy people because they don't flaunt it.
Yeah. I'm just opening it up to random pages at this point. And one of the things I see is, a quote by Warren Buffett. One of the things he says is to make money they didn't have and didn't need, they risked what they did have and did need. And that's foolish. It is just plain foolish. If you risk something that is important to you for something that is unimportant to you, it just does not make any sense. And half the things that we talk about is hey, let's make your money work for your future. Let's make it do something for your family. Let's create generational wealth. Let's do all this stuff. But people would just rather buy the fancy cars so that the appearances are there and they're not using debt to their advantage. They're not doing all of these kind of things. And so it's a great starting point for mindset.
100%. Psychology of Money, huge recommendation. Please read this book. It's not a hard read. It's 238 pages. And you'll get a lot out of this book. Really set the path for where you want your personal relationship with money to be as you're starting a journey into becoming wealthy or becoming a business owner, or you're already in the process and you need a little bit of a setback of why you're doing what you're doing. From that point, if you follow us if you know Power 3 Financial, if you know me, if you know McCall, you know that we specialize in cash value life insurance. And if you want to learn more about cash value life insurance, we're going to talk about multiple different books by the same author. And that author is none other than David McKnight. David McKnight has 3 different books out that are absolutely fabulous. The Power of Zero, The Volatility Shield, and Look Before You LERP. But let's start with The Power of Zero, because this one is a very powerful book. You might have seen in season 2, I asked every single insurance agent, what book would you recommend people read if they wanted to learn more about this stuff? And 9 times out of 10, it was The Power of Zero.
The Power of Zero. So, I mean, literally, like the opening line on the front cover, right, is how to get to the 0% tax bracket and transform your retirement. So many people recommend this book because it's not even just about life insurance. Like, yeah, he brings that up because of the tax-free element, because it's debt and loans and all that stuff and policy loan provisions, right? He talks about that as being part of it, but he's talking about how to maximize your 401k, maximize your Roth, maximize like everything in your financial portfolio to minimize your taxation when you retire. Because there's a myth out there that where people will tell you that your tax bracket is going to be lower when you retire. It may happen for some people, but it's not going to happen for all people. And so for you to plan your life thinking you're going to be in a lower tax bracket and that doesn't happen, you're going to wish you prepared a little better.
The foreword of the book is written by a CPA as well. This is not a life insurance heavy book like McCall mentioned. And that foreword starts with taxes will be increasing. This book is a wake-up call to reality. The Power of Zero talks about basically shifting your money and, again, your mindset away from traditional financing, that you don't have to just do things the way that things have always been done, and you shouldn't. Taxes are going to increase. You're most likely not going to be in a lower tax bracket, and you need to think ahead.
Anyone who's been paying attention, right, in 2018, they rewrote the law so that in 2026, the taxes were going to go up. And so this book, he adds a whole section of, like trying to catch people before 2026 to be like, hey, these are things that you can do now to take advantage of being in a, what does he call it? A tax sale, right? Because they're cheaper now. And they're not going to be unless something changes. And I think it's so important. The very first chapter, like the opening chapter, talks about a CPA who in 2011 was going around, and he kept saying taxes are going to increase. And you would ask people like, why? Like, do you know why taxes are going to increase? And they would say all sorts of things like kids, houses, market, blah, blah, blah. And his answer, was a 4-letter word, was math. Taxes have to increase because of the debt that we have accumulated in this country. They have to increase in order to offset that debt.
There's a part where you talked about like taxes being on sale today on page 127. The cost of getting into the tax-free bucket is that you have to be willing to pay taxes today. And that is the problem with most people, is that they don't want to interrupt their current tax year and they don't think about the future. So many people were stuck in this, well, this year, I don't want to pay extra taxes. YOLO. People even say YOLO anymore. But like they don't think they do. But people don't want to pay more taxes today. And that results in you will pay more taxes later. Mm-hmm. You have to pick your consequences for your actions. And like, that's what they're going to be.
So many people are so focused on rate of return and having as much as they can in their 401ks, right? We hear all the time, like, I wish I had $1 million in my 401k, but people are missing with the full picture of what that looks like fully. And 5 years ago, it was a 4% rule.
What you should be taking to make the money last is now a 3% rule.
What's 3% of $1 million? $30,000 a year. And that's before taxes. Like, you're not going to be able to live off of that.
I mean, and there's this section that says the final call to action. And he mentions that they reduce taxes, which they is the government. They reduce taxes over the next 8 years and will borrow an extra $1.5 trillion through 2028 to pay for it. This means that the eventual fix for our economic woes will be even more painful and more dramatic than it might have been prior to the new tax cuts. Tax cuts are slanted to return to their pre 2018 levels in 2026, but the reality is this: they're likely to go even higher as we approach 2030 and beyond. And then he goes to the end and it says, and as of January 1st, 2018, you're on the clock because taxes are going back up and they're going to go up higher than we've seen in a long time. And 2018, just, for anybody listening, that's more than 6 years ago. Like we're going to be on year 7 of being on the clock and people are not waking up to this fact yet.
Literally, again, every person we've talked to has recommended this book. We cannot recommend this book enough.
Our clients read this book and tell us like, oh my God, I can't believe it's tiny.
Like it's tiny, guys. It's a little, it's an easy read. It's not heady. Like anyone can read it, but it's going to be life changing. I recommend this book to everyone I talk to.
David McKnight does it again. And let's go to the Volatility Shield. So the next David McKnight book, the Volatility Shield, this is where you get that full picture of like someone's personal story. It's a novella. So it does read like a book. It's not all financial verbiage and jargon. It's a story. And it talks about what, McCall, you were mentioning, that people are so focused on high returns, they forget about coming down from the mountain.
What you just said, it was such a light bulb moment for me, right? When I was reading this we hear people all the time talk about, well, I get higher rates of return in a 401k and I can get so much more in my 401k. And we're always like, yeah, but what's coming out of it on the backside isn't going to last you forever, because there's a bunch of things that people aren't seeing or thinking about, right? When you take a money out of your 401k, you're therefore decreasing the value of the asset and you're going to earn interest on a smaller number. And this doesn't take into account the years where the market is going to go negative, which I think we say this a lot, but in a 20-year time period, you can expect the market to go negative at least 5 times. And you're not in a position to keep putting money into the 401k when you retire to offset those downturn years. Not only are you taking money out, you also can lose money and take your money out in the same year, which means this lifetime of income you thought you were going to have just dwindled drastically. And he paints a really good picture of what that looks like and how that can affect you in this book. And, and again, his point is like, you need to have something supplemental to offset not only those downturn years, but also like the years where you probably shouldn't take any money out because you need your 401k to perform, because you're not able to put money back into it. So yeah, you can get higher rates of return in a 401k, but can you get more out of a 401k than another option? Not all the time. And that's kind of the picture he paints.
The name, the Volatility Shield, it's also painting this picture that if you have a 401k and that's been your main place of saving money, great, perfect. But what happens when the market does crash and that's the money you were relying on? If you took some time to do more planning and thought about where else can I put money to offset those down years, well, a cash value life insurance policy would be a perfect place to do that, because even if you weren't looking at the cash value policy as a consistent retirement stream, you could still pull from it on those down years instead of pulling from the 401k. So it's your volatility shield. It's the money that's protected from the market. It's got a 0% floor. You're not going to lose anything in a down year, and you can pull money from it without devaluing your asset to help your 401k or your IRA last longer. That is the picture that is painted here to show the importance and how valuable cash value life insurance can be as part of your overall financial strategy.
Absolutely. And again, like Casey said, it's a novella. It's a small book, easy read. Your retirement is so much more than what you can get into it. It's also about what you can get out of it and planning for that accordingly.
All right. And last but not least of David McKnight, look before you lerp.
Lerp, lerp, lerp.
Lerp, lerp, lerp. Lerp is a life insurance retirement plan. And this book is really giving you ins and outs of a life insurance policy. The subtitle is Why All Life Insurance retirement plans are not created equal and how to find the right one for you. Really important for someone looking to purchase an IUL, important for agents to understand as well.
So I had a client a couple years ago who we talked on the phone. It was our first conversation, and he was kind of in that world of doing his own research and wanting to learn as much as possible. And he's like, what recommendations you got for me? And I said, well, anything by David McKnight, Power of Zero, and Look Before You Learn. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go read those and then I'll reschedule a meeting. I'm like, that's fine. 2 weeks later, he read them both. He comes back with, I'm talking like 2 notebooks pages worth of questions of the illustration that I was going to show him, because he wanted to make sure that it was going to match what was in this book, because this book talks about what you should be looking for if you want an IUL that is structured properly, which you hear us say all the time. So it helps you as the consumer know what to look for. And then, like Casey said, helps you as an agent know how to kind of set one up. Every question he had, I was able to answer. I was like, yes, this product has this. Yes, this product has this too. Yes, this product has this. And he was like, you mean everything that was in this book you already had set up? I was like, yes, I did.
One of the best parts of it is the last section where he talks about myths. And you see this a lot with people who are opposed to index universal life insurance. They say that the flexibility of index caps should have you thinking twice about IULs, meaning that they can take the S&P 500 from being capped at 10% and drop it to 8%, raise it to 12, drop it to 9, and therefore affect your overall growth and how much you're able to earn with certain indexes. And I have this section highlighted that says your 401k could lose 50% in 1 year. Your real estate values could collapse. And in theory, your IUL company could lower its caps. Like, which one are you more willing to take on when it comes to your money? And I love that I found this, because it just like reminds me, these people make it seem like it's the end of the world that an insurance carrier could lower its caps. And David McKnight just does such a good job of pushing back against these arguments. So big whoop, like your IUL has a 0% floor. You're worried about the cap on the S&P's growth going from 12 to 10 when your 401k could completely just disappear in the matter of a year. Like,
yeah,
pick the poison, my friend.
I love, literally the next is like, you must recognize the risk inherent in every financial alternative. Yeah. Like, everything has its risks. Everything. The IUL's risk is, okay, you might not earn anything this year. I'm so sorry.
But if you work with Power 3 Financial,
yeah, I was waiting for it.
You're always going to be earning something. So agents definitely should read this. If you're a client and you're not working with us, or you didn't work with us, go and read this and compare it to the policy that you have. Like, it is a huge help. It's so insightful, just making sure that you picked the right policy. And he does mention too, like, okay, so you got into a bad IUL, you have a cash value, understand what your options are going forward, because you have the option to 1035 the value of your policy into a new policy that has the things that you want out of the product. Yeah. Easy as that, and that's something that we can help with as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything by David McKnight.
Anything by David McKnight is amazing. And then let's talk about IUL ASAP by Shirley Liu. We recommend this one to our clients as well. She's not going to get as much praise as David McKnight for sure, but this IUL ASAP book is almost like kindergarten level understanding of an IUL. Like, if you want a very simple breakdown with cute little charts and stick figures and diagrams to really help break things down, Shirley Liu did a fantastic job with that. It's very easy to read. It's very informative.
This was a book that I wish I would have read as soon as I became an agent, because I think it would have really helped things click a lot quicker. Yeah. This is it's so tangible. The information is so tangible. It is, like Casey said, it's really simplified the verbiage, and there's stick figure pictures and all sorts of things to really help simplify what is inherently a complex concept.
And I know Shirley Liu is coming out with a new book about annuities, which we're still waiting for, which will be one of the next books that we read. But yeah, agents, people trying to get into this and understand before you purchase anything, IUL ASAP. fantastic choice. Taking a turn, something that everyone most likely knows, but it has to be mentioned. Robert Kiyosaki, the cash flow quadrant. Of course, there's Rich Dad Poor Dad. I don't actually have a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad, but the cash flow quadrant is so good. Goes back to kind of that realm of psychology of money, just getting you thinking about how you spend your money, how you spend your time, what do you do for work? What's your mindset when it comes to being an employee, being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, being an investor? I mean, those are literally the 4 different categories that you could fall in. And do you like where you're at or do you not? And if you don't, you need to change which quadrant that you're functioning in, because it paints this picture of, if you're an employee, this is probably what your life looks like and this is what your mindset is. If you're an employer, you're a business owner, this is how you function in the society. You're going to get more benefits than employees do. If you're an investor, same thing. And if you're an entrepreneur, and kind of talks about how you don't want to stay an entrepreneur forever. Like, you need to take advantage of a business model to really accomplish freedom in the sense of your time and your money. I would definitely read Cash Flow Quadrant.
So a lot of the books that we've already mentioned I would put in the category of our fairly easier reads. The next book or so that I think we're going to talk about are headier. But I think the one that I want to bring up first is the Becoming Your Own Banker.
I think one of the best parts about this book is that he does do these fully printed out illustrations of numbers and projections, and he's explaining it very thoroughly. Nelson Nash is the father of whole life insurance. Like, he's not around anymore, but he made a big impact on this industry, really getting people to see that government having a role in our finances is not a good thing, which I think is what he touches on a lot in the beginning. He mentions government as if it's a parasite taking from society. Just taking control of your finances, having responsibility over what you're doing with your money, where it's going, how you're using it, when you can access it without penalty, and not just relying on the government to hold your hand and help you retire.
One of the biggest things I personally got out of this book that's not related to whole life structuring and whole life policies was where he talks about Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law is the idea that as your income increases, so do your expenses. You're like, oh, I have more money, so I'm going to spend more money. And he's like, you cannot improve your future. You cannot improve your life if you don't beat Parkinson's law, where as your income increases, you do not increase your expenses. You have to be disciplined enough to let your expenses stay stagnant while you increase your income.
Yeah, on page 28 under Parkinson's law, he says, a luxury once enjoyed becomes a necessity. Like, I'm falling, helpless to this at the moment, because we're looking at buying a fridge, and I'm like, I don't want to have a fridge where there's not a water spout. Okay, right. I need to have a water spout at the fridge. Like,
I need to be able to get my water from the fridge where it's already cold.
We used to not have, or I used to have one, and now we don't. I'm just like, it's really annoying to have a Brita. Like, it's really annoying. Like, I hate it.
I hate having to refill it.
I have to refill it all the time. Like, it's such a luxury, though. Like, give me a break. Like, just fill up the water jug. It's not that hard.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, a lot of these books have mindset moments because, again, you can't change anything until you change your mindset.
It's traditional financing for a reason, that all of these books are trying to combat your typical way of thinking and the way that everyone does things. So, of course, like, you're not going to agree or get on board with any of the ideas in any of these books if you still have a traditional mindset of how things should be done. The next book is a 2-in-1. We got the white side, we got the orange side, and it is none other than The Laser Fund by Doug Andrew. Him and his sons have done some questionable things, is what it sounds like. Okay. That doesn't take away from the value that this book has to offer. You don't have to like Doug Andrew. I'm not saying I like him, but this book is so good. It is hefty. It's
Yeah.
and it is
We
not your beginner book. I would
mm-mm,
not pick up this book first thing. You need to
mm-mm.
read all of the other books first and then go to the Laser Fund, because even being in the industry, we read it twice. There is so much to take in with the Laser Fund. He does a lot of more advanced planning. He's talking about tax codes a lot, talking about Roth conversion. We're doing case studies. I mean, it is a information packed book, but if you don't know what the hell he's talking about, it's not going to
Uh-huh.
make any sense.
But this, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, was the first book I read.
Sorry, McCall.
The first side, like, there's, like she said, there's two sides. One side is the strategies, the charts. The other one is
The
stories, like
left
of real.
brain approach,
Yeah,
it even says.
yeah. The other side is the stories and real life scenarios of how these have helped people in situations, like, because you can't plan life is going to life, and so it's kind of nice to see how it's helped real people. And I also want to say Doug Andrews has a very specific strategy that he implements, and that's the only strategy he uses for IULs. It's a good one if that's your fit, which is a level 5 pay.
100%. You should tell him about the lily pad example, though, because I know that you love that.
I love that example. And I actually used it just the other day with a client, because I was like, if you have a pond that has one lily pad, and this lily pad is going to double every single day, and it takes 30 days for this pond to be full, to be completely covered in lily pads, at what point in this 30-day period was this pond half full? And most people assume it's day 15. It was day 29. Day 29, your pond was half full, and on day 30, it was completely full. And that is what compounding interest is. It took 29 days to fill up half of the pond, but on day 30, that was it.
Definitely work your way up to the Laser Fund, but it's absolutely worth it if you can get yourself through that book. Okay, next one is What Would the Rockefellers Do by Garrett B. Gunderson. And a lot of people have heard of this book. A lot of people really look to this book for how they want to set up their finances when they've become deep into the cash value life insurance world, whether it's whole life, whether it's IUL, doesn't really matter. The point of this book is teaching people how to utilize life insurance and trusts to create generational wealth.
Mm-hmm.
It goes more into the generational wealth setup and this waterfall method than actually just explaining cash value life insurance, which is why it's important and why I'm leaving it towards the end, because this would be one of your last steps of really putting like all of the pieces together.
Yeah. And I want to say too, because I mentioned it already briefly in this podcast. Sometimes when we recommend authors, when we read books from authors, they are one of the two. They're like only IULs or only whole life. Read everything with a grain of salt, because this guy is a only whole lifer.
Only IULer.
And Doug Andrews is an only IULer, right? And so it's like, just because that's what they're saying is the only product to use, still doesn't make it the right product for you. That is their opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and like Garrett B. Gunderson, has been endorsed by Robert Kiyosaki. But like same thing with Nelson Nash, which is a whole life guy, Doug Andrews, David McKnight, like big players in the financial world endorse both sides of this insurance world. It's just so silly that people choose sides at all. But if you want to have a family bank and get a sort of blueprint for doing that, this is a great book for that. 100% recommend. And last but not least, ties into that as well. It's our Living Trusts and Estate Planning for Beginners, which was a fantastic book. Very easy read. It really is for beginners. If you have gotten your life insurance policy set up, you're contemplating getting a life insurance policy set up, you have kids, you have other assets, you have a business, doesn't matter. Getting a living trust and doing estate planning is vital to the success of the entire financial plan. If you just get the life insurance, you did half of the thing.
Yeah.
That's only the first part. You need to get a trust set up. You need to make sure your will is complete. You need to have a power of attorney. You need to think about all of these extra steps because the life insurance or your 401k or your IRA, no matter where your money is, if you don't have the plan for what happens when you are no longer here, unfortunately, the government is just going to take all of that money. Your family is not going to get it. So
Yeah.
we don't talk about it enough, but just, proof that we are we are taking these things into consideration as well. Trusts, wills are a huge part of making sure that your family is completely set up and that you've done all of your due diligence in making sure that your assets are protected. They're going to the right people when you pass.
Mm-hmm.
Very easy read, very helpful. Just everything that you could possibly think of. Guardianship for when you have young kids. I mean, McCall, you have kids. Like, I know you read this
Yeah.
book, you're like, oh my God, there's so many things I need to do. Like,
well, I mean, I read the book and immediately made a will. But there's a lot of things in there. Like I'm a single mom. I don't really have a lot of people here. So one of the things is like, who can make medical decisions for you if you're unconscious? Like, so it's not even just like living trust and estate planning. It's like your day to day. Like, are you prepared for just life? Like, it helps to kind of know how to get all of your ducks in a row.
100%. Fun fact, reading is something that can help prevent Alzheimer's disease.
Yep.
So you should read books, especially ones that are going to enhance your life and your family's life. Even if you just start with one, you won't regret it. A lot of people don't want to take the time to understand any of this stuff. And at some point they're going to wish that they did.
Right. And I think that kind of brings us full circle of like, your mindset matters. And you are the only person that has the power to change that. And we've given you resources to help.
Yes.
But that's up to you.
And, if you only read the IUL, ASAP, or Power of Zero and you come and talk to us, we will be your resource as well. We can make sure, to tell you exactly what your next steps should be. And we do take pride in being a resource for people that want this information. We have done the work so you don't have to. But of course, it would be really nice if you did some yourself.
We do tell people, like, do your own research. So now we've given you some research to do.
Yes.
Because I think that's a lot of the emails we get is like, hey, I just want to learn some more. Can you give me some book recs? I've got like 20.
Well, awesome. And that is all we got for today on this episode of the You're an Asset podcast. McCall, thanks for joining me.
Anytime.
Always a pleasure. I'm sure we'll see you again soon. Otherwise, stay tuned. Check us out next week. If you want to follow us on social media, check out our website, reach out to us for your insurance needs. Everything you need is below this video in the description, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye. The You're an Asset podcast is not giving financial advice. We are not licensed financial advisors, and our licensing is strictly in insurance products. The information that we talk about is specific to the products that we work with. We cannot guarantee that other agents will have the same product features that we discuss on the show.